Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Hi there, welcome to Ethical Perspectives. My name is Quinn Pettifer. I'm with the Gazette, and I will be hosting this fantastic panel today. And what is our topic? Our topic today is the role of civic leadership and young professionals. And I must say, it's been a while since we've had a chance to come in. We've had some inclement weather these last few weeks, and we're so excited to have this fantastic panel here today to talk about this important topic. With me is Carissa Johnson with Cedar Rapids Freedom Festival, Jordan Atwater with the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance, and last but certainly not least, Mr. Aaron Murphy with Aaron Murphy Interiors. Thank you guys for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, so this topic came up in a couple of different conversations, and there's been a lot of attention when it comes to young professionals in workforce and the millennial generation and even younger generations stepping into leadership roles when it comes to their careers. But there hasn't been so much, at least until recent history, when we talk about young professionals in civic engagement, when we're talking about their role in the community. And that's why I wanted to bring you guys in here today. So if you don't mind, I want to start out by just sharing a little bit about each one of you, because I think you guys each bring a little bit of great perspective here, not only with what you do professionally, but how you're involved in the community. So Carissa, I'm going to start with you.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited
absolutely.
to be here. I'm Carissa Johnson. I am with the Cedar Rapids Freedom Festival, and I'm the Events and Marketing Director. So I handle all the marketing, social media, volunteer programs, plan all the events. So I'm very busy year-round, surprisingly, but it's fun work and I love it. So I'm very involved in the community. I work with different community groups on a regular basis throughout the year, and I'm also involved with Impact CR, which is a young professionals group in Cedar Rapids, and I'm also on the Community Development Innovation Council for the Economic Alliance. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and chat about this topic.
Jumping right in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How about you, Jordan?
Thanks for the segue there.
Yeah.
I work at the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. I'm the business and leadership specialist there. Two of my main roles are I oversee the Leadership for 5 Seasons program. We have an adult, a youth, and then an executive program. The adult really focuses on getting those members that go through the class to see different aspects of the community over nine class periods. And then at the end, ultimately, we want these people to become community champions and very involved in the community. So if we can get all 35 of them to do that per year, we're going to have a very, very strong community. Also, I'm the liaison for Impact CR, which is the Young Professionals Organization. And so I just make sure our mission is aligned with the Economic Alliance, provides support for the group, and then also just researching other young professional groups around the nation to see what they're doing, something innovative and that we might be able to replicate here. So those are two of my main focuses for the Economic Alliance.
Excellent. Thank you. Aaron.
I'm a Eastern Iowa boomerang. So I made it back to Cedar Rapids.
Is that on your business card?
It is,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Coming right back at you. I started an interior design and decorating firm a couple of years ago. So I've got the entrepreneur aspect for today. I serve on several boards in the Cedar Rapids community, and I'm very active in the arts communities and the downtown communities as well. I also serve on the Impact CR board. So trying to engage with young professionals as much as possible and create networking opportunities for them.
Absolutely. So that's why we had the three of you on here today, because not only are you able to talk about this from your own professional point of view, but you guys are living this. You guys are young professionals that are out in the community and engaged. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing, not only within your own personal experiences, but where are you seeing young professionals step up and really get involved when it comes to civic engagement and civic community groups?
One of the first thing that comes to my mind that's kind of more of a recent development is in the political realm. Abby Finkenauer, who beat out Rod Blum, who's a young professional, and then on a local level, Ashley Hinson. You really see young professionals stepping into political power roles, which is awesome, that we're seeing that more and more. And also I think nonprofit boards are huge. And when I talk to young professionals in the community, it's not what board are you on, it's how many you are involved with. And I think that really speaks to the need and the want and the drive for young professionals to be involved in the community and be involved in those decision-making aspects, because young professionals are very passionate, and they want to show that by the boards and different things that they're involved with. So those are some things that come to my mind.
They really are stepping up. And Jordan, you mentioned Leadership for 5 Seasons and how you guys are starting to track, after the classes graduate, where they're getting involved. And what are you seeing? What's trending as far as young professionals and civic engagement?
You see them just trying to get their feet wet. So they might volunteer at several different organizations, and they might not go back to some of them because they really don't connect with the mission. I think that's the biggest thing I see is young professionals finding a nonprofit or an organization they really connect with on a deep level, and then wanting to dive all the way in on that. And that doesn't say they're just doing it at one of them. They find several that maybe that they're extremely passionate about, and then they go all in on those. I don't think you're going to see as many that spread their time evenly throughout, very worthy organizations. They're going to find 2 or 3 things they're particularly passionate about, and then dive full on into those. And I think that's a benefit to those nonprofits and boards and all that, all those things, because you have somebody who's so engaged and involved. You don't have a lot of passive people in there. You have people that are they want to create change through these organizations.
It's also a really great way to get to know your community.
Absolutely.
I mean, just as soon as I moved to Cedar Rapids, I really didn't know much about the community at all, and I immediately joined 2 boards, just so I could kind of get to take a temperature of the city and where things were going. One of them was the Freedom Festival, and then the other was an arts community board. So it's just sort of trying to figure out where I could fit in, and where that was, where the next step I was going to take was as well.
So do you think the motivation is from a personal perspective, or this is going to advance my career perspective, or do you think it's a little bit of both, or what's motivating people to step up?
I definitely think both. Just because, like I said, young professionals are so passionate, and so that passion, you want to sustain that, and by volunteering or joining boards, you accomplish that. And I think also professionally as well, when you volunteer for an organization that you're passionate about, that gives you experience. And if you're a good volunteer and you make those connections, one day that might lead to a future career for you.
Absolutely. Guys, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, there's the networking aspect of it too. You just never know who you're going to meet at these organizations. So there's a lot of personal fulfillment in it, but also professionally. I think a big change is that young professionals use these opportunities to grow skills they don't get in their job. So, if they're doing marketing in their role 40 hours a week, they might want to do something completely different in their nonprofit service. And I think that's awesome that people don't feel like they need to bounce around careers to get and jobs to get experience. They feel that they can go out and get the experience they need serving on boards and nonprofits. And that's huge for the business community, that you don't have the typical, young people bounce around job to job a lot. They can get experience that maybe their employer can't provide, and that sets them up really for the future.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about leadership styles. And Erin, I'm going to start with you. Are we seeing, you guys are obviously very involved in a lot of different things, and you're seeing a lot of varying generations serving on different community boards and initiatives. Are leadership styles changing when it comes to young professionals? Are there different trends that are either being commented on, or you're seeing in terms of conflict resolution, use of technology, building consensus. I mean, are there challenges in having this mixture or having YP step into these new roles?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the top-down aspect sort of being turned on its ear, and having young professionals and sort of the younger generation who are really socially inclined are starting to try and change that as much as they can. So there's a lot of listening involved, there's a lot of question asking that typically wouldn't happen. I can think of several recent board meetings even where we just continue to ask questions until we get the answers that we're looking for. And I think that in previous times where it just might be, here's the directive, this is where we're going, I need a yes or a no. And then in the professional world too, I mean, I try and get to know my clients as much as possible. So I'm very socially inclined as well to get to know them as much as possible so that we can make decisions together. It's more of a collaborative effort, and I think that we're seeing that too.
So what's the reaction with a style like that when you're on a board with a lot of different personalities, and not just generational, but just, you know, people that are like, oh, okay, we're going to get into this now. Is it positive? Is it become more of the mainstream rather than the exception?
I think many of us are data driven, but really we're just looking to get as much information as possible before we come to a clear decision. And the more of that you have available out in the open and has been looked at from several different angles, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jordan, you guys do a lot in your leadership classes. I know actually individual reflection when it comes to leadership styles. So what are your thoughts on this?
You know, we use, it's called Leadership Principles Inventory. It's a book that's used in a lot of graduate programs. We found that's what works for us. Luckily, we're able now to assess the class at the beginning, so everyone takes an assessment. They ask 5 to 7 people to assess their leadership skills in 5 different areas. And so then they get a pretty substantial packet. And then they set a couple goals for the end of the program. And finally this year, they're going to be able to take that assessment again to see if they've grown throughout the program. So that's a big part of that. I think young people want feedback constantly. And this is a way that we can provide that feedback to them. So it was a great call to add that to the program, and I think it's really going to benefit those folks going forward.
And their employers.
And their employers.
Not just what they're doing within the class, but also being able to take that out and learn more about themselves and what they're capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. Their employers are generally the ones that are sponsoring to go through this program, so they want them to get the leadership qualities out of the program, but they also know people who are more involved in their communities tend to stay. And with workforce challenges that we have in the area, they need these people to stay. So the more they become ingrained and start serving on nonprofit boards and just becoming involved, it makes it harder to move away for a job elsewhere.
It's really building a life.
Yes, and we if we can do that, again, that's another goal of getting these people to stay in the area too.
Yeah, I think mentorship in a leader is important in young professionals because when you have a mentor, you know, they seek out opportunities for you and they put it in your path, and you know, it makes you grow professionally and personally and challenges you. And I think, you know, a couple facets of a good leader, you know, are inspiration and accountability. You know, young professionals, they want to feel inspired in order to grow in their role and, you know, that longevity of their role, and while being held accountable. So I think that's just kind of touching on, you know, what Aaron and Jordan said.
Absolutely. And I know you're personally involved in a lot of different groups, but just from your role at Freedom Festival, being on your board, I see a lot of different generations that are coming in. And can you talk a little bit about the style? We talked a little bit about leadership style and just the role. How do you think the impact of more and more young professionals being involved in things like Freedom Festival? Because I mean, arguably, Freedom Festival has the broadest demographic of people involved when you really look at all of the events that you guys put on.
Yes, absolutely.
So a lot of those volunteers are working together. Do you see patterns in styles or differences in styles?
I think specifically with the Freedom Festival board, I think we're all very similar. But we do have, for example, our president, he has a different leadership style than the rest of the board, but that's driving us to where we need to go. And I think young professionals, it's important to take on leadership roles within nonprofits. I know of people who are on the exec committee, or you have a young professional, serving as the secretary, and you might have another generation as the president, and it's those two working together. I think is huge.
Understanding each other, absolutely. So let's talk about something that isn't always comfortable, which is succession planning. So the realities, very similar to the conversation about workforce and how the C-suite levels, that are often baby boomers, or they're starting to think about retirement, or they have started to retire, and young professionals, generations after them, are stepping into those positions. In the professional world, we're seeing some of that happen in Civic, in our civic life as well. How are those conversations starting? Are they starting? Are they just kind of happening? Or to Erin, your point about people are asking questions, what are some of those methods in terms of succession planning and handing the not only invitation to be on the board, but to lead some of these organizations? How is that taking shape?
I think
Jump in, anybody.
There's quite a bit of hesitation when it comes to that. I mean, so many, particularly nonprofit boards who have been serving the community for a number of generations, there's a very particular style to how they perform and how they give back to the community. And I think that they feel it's important that that role does not change. So whether having someone from an older generation take over the reins and kind of continue that executive level planning is best for that nonprofit, or is it better to kind of stagger in some younger folks with the older folks, very similar to what's happening at the Freedom Festival, so that in that executive line we're seeing varying perspectives and seeing different ways of looking and analyzing the data and information that's coming through that organization. Because without it, we're just going to see the same thing over and over and over again.
What do you think's at risk if that doesn't happen? What are we looking at as a community?
Not being able to evolve or keep up with the changes that are happening in the city. I think particularly when we look at city council, everyone is an older generation. Obviously, you have to be a Cedar Rapids resident for X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But it's also it's difficult to get into a position like that. We're seeing a lot of the national political movements with the younger generations just jumping right in there. And I think that that's trickling very, very slowly, not nearly as quickly as it could be, particularly for Cedar Rapids.
I think you risk boards, nonprofits actually maybe shrinking or folding in their missions because they don't have those people that are engaged. If it's the same folks that are always being moved up to those leadership positions, and the young people in the organization, in the board or whatever, don't feel connected, they're going to go find an opportunity where they can gain that leadership experience. So I think identifying those people early that really they live that mission, they want to, they see themselves, and just having frank conversations about it. Would you be interested in perhaps moving into this role in 5 years? And you, they have to be, the young professionals need to be okay, I need to think 5 years down the road, not, I want to do this, I want to be the president tomorrow, because I think that happens too much, that I want to instantly move into some leadership role. You need to see the history and move through some things and gain those leadership qualities.
Well, the opportunity to be groomed or mentored into that position as well, and kind of get to know the ins and outs of a particular organization just a little bit better.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I wouldn't. I think that would be a bad move for a board to just bring somebody in who doesn't see the history, because that's so important, and the things that they've tried in the past that haven't worked. I think that's some of the best background that you can get is what didn't work.
Balancing that excitement of of the young professional that's like, I'm ready to jump in, I'm ready to take over, hand it on over, I'm ready, with balancing that with the realities of, you don't want to set that person up for failure. You don't want to set them up for all these challenges that they may not be thinking about. I mean, I love the idea of that stacked kind of approach where you've got a mentor, back to Carissa, your point. Talk a little bit about, and Carissa, feel free to jump in a little bit more about that succession planning, because I know that's, again, something that you guys have talked a lot about too, but tying that in with some of the assurances to either stakeholders or to audiences, clients, the community at large. So not only the internal board conversations of, okay, this is how we're going to plan for the next round of leaders, but how do you communicate that out to your external audiences? Is there a magic bullet for that, or?
That'd be nice.
There's not necessarily a magic bullet, but I think when it comes to every single nonprofit and community organization, it's following the money. So it's not only about engaging the next group of people, it's about how are we going to engage them financially. People, obviously, giving styles have changed dramatically even in the last 10, 15 years, and it's really difficult to track that. And to find out, we may be a bigger generation and we may be wanting to get more and more involved, but data-wise, we are not giving. And we're not financially committing to those organizations. We may be volunteering or giving of other ways and means, but we're certainly not stepping up financially. So having a group of people on a board where you can figure out, well, how would I best give of my financial means? I think that's the next biggest thing that we have to think about.
Yeah.
And the larger hubs those community hubs are going to need to prepare accordingly because of that reality. Definitely.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about, as a young professional, so from your own perspectives or from what you're hearing from your peers, what are some of the challenges of stepping up and stepping in? We talked a little bit about succession planning, communication, different styles, but what have you seen as some of those big challenges? Chris, do you have any specifics? Or
I think something that comes to my mind is stereotypes, just as being a young professional in the community, and other coworkers or other people in the community not, being on board necessarily, or they don't fully understand. But I think a way to break those down is forming relationships and working on projects, on tasks, on things like that, to make others aware and know, like, we are ready, we are capable, we are able, qualified to take on this role. I think that's a good way to kind of break that down,
rather than being in a box of,
oh,
she's a millennial, those millennials, right?
Exactly.
No, you are a human being.
Right. Exactly.
Jordan, how about you?
I just think, if I agree, is that trust. Some of these people have put 20, 30 years of their lives into these organizations. They're very scared to let it go. And I think the best way to prove that we are ready is by action. Taking on little tasks, proving you can do the things that are asked of you on time, a high quality product, just building that trust with those people that have done it for 25 years. That's ultimately how we're going to break those, the stereotypes and just that, the trust aspect of it. When you prove that you can do it, people are more than willing to help you lead and let you lead after that.
And I think gaining their knowledge too, and just sitting with them and listening to them, because they are seasoned in the workforce and in their path, and we have so much to learn from them. And I think being open to that as young professionals is also important as well.
I think one of the other things that we don't always think about is, if a younger professional jumps into a leadership position, there can be quite a bit of fear and hesitation on that. particularly on larger boards where maybe everyone is older than you are, and you are trying to set a tone or a direction, and that can be very challenging, given a varying degree of circumstances. But I think that might be one thing that holds a lot of people back from wanting to step into that next role, or really I only want to jump into like secretary treasurer, I don't want to jump into the next executive track.
That level of responsibility too can be intimidating no matter what generation you're in. We've had a lot of conversation about that, about just realizing what you're taking on when you are willing to step into an executive position when it comes to civic engagement. That's scary for any age or no matter where you're at.
But particularly when at an age where you might be wanting to start a family or settling down or buying your first house, and maybe your job's really taking off. It's being diligent or managing your time effectively too in order to lead.
And still growing as a leader too. I think that's a big hesitation of young people, that they haven't quite discovered who they are as a leader, and they're nervous to jump into that role because they don't know their leadership style, or they're still developing it, and that's okay. But people being willing to go through some bumps in the road that, well, that meeting didn't go very well, or we didn't get accomplished what we needed to, being willing to coach them through things and help them find their leadership style, because they're going to find it eventually. It just might take 10, 15 years, and it's going to evolve too. I'm not sure if you ever find like, wow,
This is me.
I am this type of leader. I am never going to change.
Check it out and move on.
That isn't a good leader if you're not evolving.
No.
But finding that initial, leader in you, I think is tough and daunting for some people, that they just say, I'll keep volunteering or take on a treasurer or secretary role, that I don't really have to lead meetings or set direction.
Right. Yeah. It's very, even from 5 years ago, it feels like it's very different now, because every move that you make as a member of this group is a little bit more on display, whether it's through social media or just, your own, building your own personal brand. And this is a small, large community that we live in, right? I mean, it's, you're making a name for yourself, but you're also putting yourself out there. And that's a risk that not everybody's comfortable taking. Yeah. It is. So as we're going down to the last couple minutes here, what advice would you give a young professional, whether that's somebody in your own age bracket, or up and coming young professionals, because there are generations that are coming up beyond millennials? What advice would you give them that they're just looking or even thinking about getting involved in the community?
I would say know your passions and find an organization that can help you with that, because I think serving on a board, you want to be all in and you want to give your 100%. And if you're not passionate, that's hard to do. So I think that's the first step in that. And also saying yes to opportunities. Like this, for example. Yeah. I said yes to this and I'm having a blast.
Thanks for that, by the way. See, it wasn't so bad. No, I guess we're not done yet, but
because you never know who you're going to meet or what will come out of that opportunity. And I also think knowing your limits as well, because you don't want to overcommit. You only have 100%, so you want to make sure you don't give any more than that.
Absolutely. Jordan?
I would say be willing to listen and be patient. Once you find that passion, come with ideas and constantly push others with your ideas, but also be willing to listen to them all too, because it can become very tough, and the respect is earned, not given. So continue to push the thinking forward, but also be willing to listen to others, especially those very seasoned members that, hey, I love your idea, but let's think about this. So being willing to listen, that's a huge part.
Aaron,
and I would
10-second advice?
Starting small. I mean, there are 30 boards, commissions, and other pieces just in the city of Cedar Rapids, for the city of Cedar Rapids alone. You can start on a committee. You don't have to jump on a board right away. Sometimes they'll allow you to do that so you can get a better feel for what you might want to take on next.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you for joining us for Ethical Perspectives. We'll see you next time.